So with that though, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to jump right into the training here so that we can kind of just dive in and make sure to answer any questions that you have. We will have a Q&A question at the session at the end here as well. But again, go ahead and just feel free to type in any questions that you might have into the question box, and we'll try and address those during the training here as well as at the end during the Q&A session. So with that, let's go ahead. I'm going to... you should be able to see the screen here, and so we're going to just go ahead and bring it right into the FileCenter window here now. So you should be able to see that. So the title of this is really getting started with FileCenter Receipts. So the idea here is to really make sure that those that are just joining us on, with FileCenter Receipts, maybe purchased in the last week or two, or last couple days, for instance, we want to make sure to address everything there. I know that we have a fair number of people that are joining us that have had FileCenter for quite some time, and FileCenter Receipts. And so because of that, I want to make sure that we can make sure to answer any of those questions there too. The idea here is what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cover basically from the beginning. Like the idea behind here was that if you were looking at just getting started, like our title is getting started with FileCenter Receipts, we want to get, kind of cover that aspect. But then the training itself is going to cover everything that, even if you've been using FileCenter Receipts and you're coming here for a refresher or anything like that, we just want to make sure that you can get started and you're moving forward and using the FileCenter software. So with that, let's go ahead and just dive in. I'm going to go ahead. Just like I said before, we're getting started right here from the very beginning. So when you first get FileCenter installed, what you're going to see is you're going to see the FileCenter Receipts tab up here along the top, where you'll be able to then see a welcome to FileCenter, and this is where you're going to put in your product key. So you should receive an email from us being able to then basically have that available for you. And so from here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to type in that product key. So we're going to go ahead and enter that. We'll save that. Oh, didn't get it all the way copied. There we go. And from here, now, at this point, we're going to come right in, and this is right where everything basically begins, okay? And so we're just going to go ahead. You'll see that I'm actually using a trial version here, so that way we're just getting kind of really started. So when you enter that in, you should not see this up here along the top. You shouldn't see that trial of FileCenter Receipts expires anymore. So the very first thing that I recommend is that we create a box. And so when we create a box, when we think of boxes, we can think of like a shoebox. So maybe you're going in and you're throwing all of your receipts into a shoebox or a Ziploc bag or something like that, right? And so a lot of times it ends up just staying in my wallet, or maybe it's here on my desk. I have a big pile of receipts from a conference that I just went to. So we're going to go ahead and scan some of that stuff. So when we come in, though, the very first thing that we look at is we're going to have a box. Now, a box might be, maybe you might have one for personal, for all your personal expenses. Maybe you have one for your business expenses. Some of our customers will use it, and they have one for personal and for business, and they do it by year, and so that way they can have some segmentation based off of the year that they're scanning everything in. And then when you're creating a new box, you can create a new 2022 box later on, and I'll show how that works. But it just makes it a little easier to go in and manage and handle instead of seeing thousands and thousands of receipts inside of the receipts program if you didn't want to. So with that, we're going to go ahead, we're going to create our first box. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to just click here on the boxes. You can also click up on the icon up here, and you can say add a receipt box. And from here you can come in and you can enter in the name of your box. And so we're just going to call this one 2021, and we could call that personal, for instance. Okay, so now we're just going to come in, we're going to click OK. And then from here, once we click OK again, a window is going to pop up to ask you if there's any kind of integration into the program that you would like to be able to utilize. Now, I'm going to show both ways here. The first one, though, for the personal side, is that I am not going to use any integration. I don't use QuickBooks for my personal expenses. And so there's QuickBooks, and there's QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, and there's also Xero as well if you're an accountant that's joining us here today. So we have those 3 integration pieces right now. Now, when it comes to like a personal one, though, most of the time you're not going to have either of these 3 items here. So we're just going to make it so that it's none, and then we're going to go ahead and close. And then from here, we are now, like, our box is now created. So you'll actually see a little tab here along the top. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to create another box here, and I'm going to just call this one QBO for QuickBooks Online. And then we're going to go ahead and click OK here. And then once we click OK again, you're going to see the integration window is going to pop up for us again. And then we're going to come in up here and we're going to click on QuickBooks Online. We're going to say Connect to QuickBooks. And so let me drag this over here so that you can kind of see what that looks like. So if you're using QuickBooks, we're going to come in, we're going to click the sign in. It may ask you for your 2-factor authentication. Now, this is where, when you're creating a box and you're using QuickBooks Online, for instance, you're going to be able to see all the companies that you might have access to. You might have more than one company that you're doing your QuickBooks or your accounting work and bookkeeping work for. And so you're going to be able to see either of the boxes or multiple boxes or multiple accounts, company accounts that you might have. And what this might even be is like, if you are an accountant or bookkeeper, you may have lots of clients that you might have. And so you're going to be able, you could create a box for every single one of your companies that you do the bookkeeping for. And so that just makes it even really, a really cool feature that you can come in and manage everything from there. So we're going to click on Trend Consulting here. We're going to go ahead and say next. And then one of the other messages you might get here is that Windows will detect it, and so you can come in and say that you want to allow access for FileCenter and QuickBooks to go. And from here, basically, FileCenter is now going to deliver a message just basically saying, hey, your login was now successful. And one of the things that you're going to see here is that QuickBooks is now going to come in and it'll sync all of your information. So it'll have your payees, your categories, or your chart of accounts, basically, and everything will sync down, and so that you'll have everything already ready. That is the one big difference between like somebody that's using an integration with QuickBooks and somebody that's personal, is that QuickBooks already is going to have a lot of that information already created, and so those that are using that is going to be a lot easier of a setup. Okay. So from here, I'm going to just come right back. I'm going to stay here in the QuickBooks Online box, so you can see that now we have 2 boxes. We have Personal and we have QuickBooks Online. And so when we're on QuickBooks Online, one of the things that you're going to see here is when I click on Lists, you're going to see a list of like different items here of lists. You have payees, categories, classes, etc. And when you're on the payees, if you're using a chart of accounts, you basically already have every single one of these payees available to you. Where, if I close this out now, and we come back to the personal one and come into lists, you'll see that the payee list is completely blank because you're starting out completely fresh. You don't have a list of those available to you anywhere to be able to pull in. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to add those or how to utilize what we've already done work-wise to help you guys have a ton of receipt or payees available to you. Okay, but so a lot of the lists will be with the QuickBooks Online integration will already be basically filled out for you so that you can quickly get started right away. Okay, but again, we're gonna stay right here in the personal one. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to start kind of customizing the box specifically for you. And so one of the things that you're going to be able to do is that when you're coming in, and again, you're going to come back up here to, we'll start with settings here first. The very first setting aspect is that we want to prompt to add after you're scanning. So basically what that does is that when you scan in a receipt, it's going to immediately prompt to add it into the FileCenter Receipts versus allowing you to continue to scan a bunch more receipts. Me personally, I turn this particular setting off because usually I have about, anywhere from 10 to 30 or 40 receipts when I come back from a conference, and I just want to get them all scanned in all at once before I go in and have it prompt me to add. So, but this is a personal preference that you can come in and have it so that it prompts you to add after scanning your receipt in. You also have use numbers with lists. So if you wanted to use a number like in the payee, like maybe it's company 123 ABC, that'll allow you to have that number in the name of the list or any of the list items. This other item here, this is one that I do like to use, is the automatically analyze new receipts. And what that does is basically when you scan in the document, it'll automatically prompt and start analyzing the receipt, looking for the payee, looking for the date, looking for the amount, things like that. And so it just makes it really easy to come in and start processing. Again, this is something that I do like to go in and I'll turn on when I'm going in and starting to process a lot of the files. After I've already scanned everything in, I'll come back and toggle this on. The other one here is where it says show inbox on the left. So you're going to see right now we have an inbox, and the inbox is basically where all of the receipts will show up when you've scanned them in and they haven't been added yet into FileCenter Receipts. And so into this list view here down below, you can see that it says payment date, payee, amount, category, and description. And this is where you'll see a list of every single receipt that's been added into FileCenter Receipts. But in the meantime, while you're scanning and capturing all the images, they'll reside up here in the inbox. And so what you'll do is that when you go in and you're adding it, you can have the inbox be up here along the top. In the past, we actually had it so that it displayed it on the left, and so you can see that now the inbox is over here on the left. And this is a personal preference. It's just what you would like to be able to see. I personally have my inbox over on the left-hand side because of the fact that I like a lot more real estate over on the right to be able to show more information. But then again, I have a 49-inch monitor, and so it actually has a lot of information, so I could do it either way if I wanted to. Okay. So that's just a couple personal preference items that you can come in and do. The other thing that you can also see is that you can change up the month or the date format in the way that it shows up inside of the list of the payment date. This is something that I like to do. I do go in and change because you'll see here right now, today is the 7th of July. And so the 7 is actually right there in the front where the month is in the middle. I personally like to have it where it goes year format first. And so I actually have year and then month, and I use digits. I don't use the abbreviation. And so I go month, and then I go day. And so then you can see here now an example of that format is over here on the right-hand side. Now I can also be even more specific, and I can say that I want all 4 digits of the year to be in there as well. And so that's just something that, again, it's a personal preference. It's how you want to have everything formatted. Because we do have people that are joining us from England and Germany and things like that that are here today. They format their dates are different than here in the United States. We typically don't do it the same way as Europe does. And so this is just a way that you can customize it exactly how you want your date format to be. Now, the other thing here is that you also have the ability to set what we call a default root path, or where the file folder of all your receipt information, your database, is basically going to reside. Now, you can actually keep the default, and you'll see that it actually puts it into your My Documents folder that is right there in Windows. Or you can specify that you want it somewhere maybe out on the server. Maybe you're going to share this receipt box with other people in your office. And you might want to make it so that that is available to them. And so you can go ahead and say that you want to set a default path of where that's going to be. And so you can come in and you can actually specify where it's at. If you don't do that, it's okay. It's fine. You can just come in. You'll find that it'll be under the documents, and you'll find a folder that's called My Receipts. And then inside of that, you'll see here right now, we have our 2021 personal and our QuickBooks Online, and that's where it's found. And so you'll know exactly where that is every single time. And that's the default path of where we put everything. Okay. So if there's any questions there on that, on any of this, go ahead and just type those questions into the box. And I do see that we do have one here. Does the automatically analyzed new receipts have to be used along with the prompt add after scan? No, it does not. So you can actually turn off prompt to add after scan, and then the automatically analyzed new receipts, when you double click on the image of the inbox, and you'll see that here in a second, it'll automatically prompt us to go ahead and it'll start analyzing that receipt for us. Okay. And so that's a really great question. Thanks for that question. I do see another question here that I do not see under the settings the show inbox on the left. Most likely in that situation, you are probably on an older version of FileCenter Receipts or FileCenter. And if you update to the latest version, you'll have that option. Because it used to be that it only had the inbox on the left-hand side. It didn't have it up on the top. Okay. So another question here is, can you enlarge the program settings themselves? So that is something that you can do inside of like the FileCenter side of things. Like if you're in FileCenter and you want to enlarge like the text or something like that, you can do that there. I might cover that a little bit later on, just so that you can come in there and do that. But yeah, I mean, when you have a really big monitor, like a 49-inch monitor, the text is really small. I personally, that's the way I like it. But yeah, I totally understand that. Okay, so there's a couple other ones, and there are things that we'll cover a little bit later on here. So I'm not going to answer them just yet. So let's go ahead and just quickly move on here. The next thing here is when it comes to lists. So if you're not using QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop or Xero, and you don't have like your a whole list of all these payees that you've already created there coming in, well then that's where you're going to come in and you're going to need to start adding some of these. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can come in and say add, and you can add an individual name here if you wanted to. So I can come in and I can put Costco, and then you could come in and say add again, and you can put a new one. But you can also come in and click a list and say add multiple items, and you can come in, and now you can come in and say, hey, I want Delta Airlines, and I maybe want Chevron, and so you can kind of get the idea here that that's something that you can do. Now, once you come in and click OK on that, then you'll see that all of those will end up showing up. And it'll automatically put that in alphabetical order for you as well. But you just come in and you can set up, the very first time that I did this, I just quickly went in and just thought of every store that I ever go to that I'm probably going to scan a receipt for. And I just typed them in real fast. Now, there is going to be something that you're going to see here that's going to be really beneficial for you going down the road. And so you'll see that as we capture our first receipt and analyze that receipt for you. But we basically have a database that's hidden in the background that has over 4,000 different vendors or payees that will be available for you. Okay. And so that'll be something that will be really nice. And so we'll show that here in just a second. The other aspect is categories. So categories is another one where, if you're not using QuickBooks Online or Desktop or Xero, then you're going to come in and you're going to put in your categories. So you might have one like that. It might be home, and so you can put one in individually, or you can come in and say add multiple items, and you can say groceries. You could say food and beverage. You could say airlines. Or you could say fuel, right? And so you can come in and you can add all your different categories that you might want, and then you can have those available too. So those are a couple of the ones that I start out with right away. Classes, when it comes to that list, is typically those that are going to be using QuickBooks Online, Desktop, or Xero will utilize classes. If you're just using this for personal use, you can just skip right past classes. You can just blow right by it. You don't have to use that at all. Okay. And even if you are using QuickBooks Online or Desktop and you don't use classes there, you can blow right past that too. Okay. Payment accounts is the next one. Payment account, what this really is you're going to look at payment account as like what credit card or debit card you are using. And not that it's credit card or cash or check or whatever that may be. You're doing it where you're coming in and you're adding the actual account. So for instance, just to kind of give you an idea of this. So I have a Visa card, right? And this is going to be one that you'll see on our demonstration here, that when I come in and I say Visa, I'm going to also put in, this is just a tips and tricks from my side of things and best practices here. So when I come in and I say Visa, I'm going to put in the last 4 digits of my Visa card, okay? And what that's going to do for me is that when I am analyzing that receipt, when FileCenter Receipts is analyzing a receipt for you, it's going to come in and it's going to look and say, oh, hey, look. And if you remember, if you look at a receipt, for instance, you're going to see it'll say Visa and it might have a bunch of X's and then it will show you your last 4 digits. And if we pick that up, we realize that that's the payment account that you're using on that receipt and we'll recognize that automatically for you. And so that's why best practices, so that you don't have to go to the drop down and hit the drop down and then select which payment account you used, you're going to be able to just immediately come in and utilize that particular account. Okay, so I like to do that. You know, I might come in here and say I have another Visa and it ends in 4760, right? And I might have a MasterCard and a Discover card or American Express, and so you can come in and put that information in, and then it'll recognize that easier for you. So then you'll want to come in and add your different payment accounts to that as well. Now we have payment methods. This is where we look at the payment methods of, you know, cash, check, credit card, debit card. And I know accounting people here are saying, Kevin, debit and cash are the same, and which it is, and I totally understand that. So, but some of us like to track it by, hey, this is our debit card, and this is the one that we used. So from here, you can come in and put anything else in here. You can put cashier's check or whatever method that the payment was made. Then that's where you're coming in, and you can just select that and put those into your list. There's also tax categories. This is where you can come in and put in some tax categories. Again, if you're using an integration, if you're on FileCenter Pro, Receipts Pro, and you're using integration, that will come in with tax categories there too. And you can put in tax categories. In fact, let me show this to you real quick, because even those people that are not using one of those programs, we were really cool about this. And if you are really wanting to come in and do tax categories as well, you could. And so we have a list of all these different tax categories. So if you are really up to speed on tax type of code and you're sending reports over to your accountant later on and you wanted to be really nice to them, you could come in here and you could check a couple of those boxes that you might know that you're using, come in, click OK, and then they'll be in that list. And so we provide those to you as well. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave those there, and then we're going to come to the next one here. Now, the first one that we're going to actually cover between field captions, list captions, receipt fields, and default columns, we're going to come to default columns first. Now, the default column, what I want you to understand is that default column is for our main view of FileCenter Receipts. And so that's where we see right now payment date, payee, amount, category, and description. And so you can see that those boxes right now are all checked. And now you can come in and you can move these around. So if you didn't want the description, if you wanted maybe that to be first, you can come in, click on it, and then click on up, and then it'll be there. One of the other ones that I like to have is I like to have the sales tax. And if you are coming in and you're watching this from Canada or the UK, you might not want that to say sales tax. You want it to say VAT, or you want it to say OST, GST, HST, QST if you're in Canada, right? And so those are some things, and you can go in and whatever they're grouped by. In Canada, typically it's I can never remember which ones they're grouped by, but it's like HST, OST, and then PST, QST, and you might utilize both fields for sales tax and sales tax too, and you're going to be able to customize the names here, and you'll see that here in just a second. But maybe I want sales tax to be in that view, and so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on that, and I want that to be after the amount, and so I can come in and I can put that and move that right up here to the top, right after the amount, or maybe I want it before the amount. And so you can go ahead and move these around. If you're also looking at it and you're looking to see a report of all the ones that are reimbursable, you can go ahead and check that, and that'll also show up here on the list. And so now, if I do come in and I click close, you're going to see here now it says payment date, payee, sales tax, amount, category, description, reimburse. And so you can see all that, everything that you want to be displayed. And so that's just, again, something that's customizable. You can get to that either by clicking on settings and clicking then on lists, or if you're just clicking on lists, you'll also come right there to it. Okay. If there's any questions there, again, make sure to put those in. I do see one that's here, and I'm gonna discuss that. The question is do payees, categories, and other carry across all the boxes, or are they by box? And so we're going to cover that here in just 1 second. So that is a really good question. Okay, receipt fields. These are the receipt fields that when you're actually going in and scanning in a receipt, and the information that pops up is going to be able to pop up there, and so that you can come in and basically you'll see all those different fields. So in this particular case, I want sales tax to be coming up. I also want the reimburse. Well, actually, I want reimburse. I don't want tax category, or maybe we will on this one since I did add some of those. And so then these are the fields that will always show up every time that you're capturing a receipt. Okay. Now, one thing that I do want to mention here, and I'm actually going to uncheck reimburse because I'm going to show that here in just a second. One of the questions here was, hey, is it possible to include like a line for shipping? So where we come in and we put in sales tax 2, 3, and 4, these are all fields that can be completely renamed and utilized for other things. It does not have to be for sales tax. Okay. And so when I cover that here, what you're going to look at is these field captions. And so when I come into the field captions list, this is where we can come in and we can completely name things differently. So for instance, if I am in the UK or Europe and I'm dealing with VAT tax, what you're going to be able to do is you're just going to come down here to sales tax, double click on the field right next to it, and then just say VAT. Okay, so now if I come in and I click on close, you'll see here, instead of it saying sales tax, it says VAT. And so then it can be completely customized depending on what region of the world that you're actually located in. Okay. And so you can come in and change that. So if you're looking to track like shipping, like you wanted to put in, hey, this is UPS or this is FedEx that it's coming by, you could come in there and, or maybe it's the shipping cost, for instance. I think that's what you were really meaning, Valerie. But in that situation, still, when you're looking at that, you can come in and say that this is what it is, and then we'll recognize a lot of that information as we're going along. Okay. Now, of course, I'm not going to have that here because all of my stuff is going to be in US dollars, so we're just going to keep that as sales tax. But you can come in here if you wanted to and say, hey, this is going to be, we'll put this in as shipping, and so you'll see that come in, right? And so at that point, that's how that works. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, feel free just to again put those in, and we can address those in the Q&A session. From here too, you can also come in and see list captions. These are the different lists. If you wanted to rename like a list that you're creating, maybe you don't want any of the things that we put in there, you can come in and you can change some of that, the caption of what that list says. So instead of maybe saying tax categories, you wanted to say, VAT categories or something like that, you could put that in there too. Okay. So from here though, now we are all set. Our box is created. We've created all these different fields that we want to be displayed and things like that. And you can now start moving forward. So we're going to now just jump into capturing, and we're about halfway through the scheduled amount of time here. But we're going to this is going to get to the point where we're going to actually start speeding up here really quickly, because this part, now that we've got everything kind of set up and ready to go, now it's ready. And we're ready to start capturing information. So there's a couple of different ways that we're going to go in and talk about capturing information or getting documents captured when it comes to receipts. First one is going to be by scanning. So if I come in and I click on the scan icon here, what you're going to see is that in most cases, if your scanner has a Twain driver, so like maybe one of the Canon scanners that we sell, or maybe it's a Fujitsu 7160, they're going to show up here. If it is a ScanSnap Fujitsu, then basically you're not going to click on the scan icon. You're just going to come right in here. You'll click it kind of in the inbox area. You'll put your receipt into the scanner and click on the little blue button that's right there on the scanner, and it's going to come right into the inbox for you, and you're all set and ready to go. Now, for the rest of us that have scanners that actually have a different way of communicating with our computers, which is what that Twain means. Actually, Twain stands for technology without an important name. So when we come in here, though, it should recognize your scanner, okay? And so one tip that I'm going to give you is that a lot of times when you're capturing information, you might be capturing document size, you might capture receipt size, you might use FileCenter Receipts, and you might use FileCenter Document Management. They're two different programs. But this information here can actually be shared across those two programs, FileCenter Document Management and FileCenter Receipts. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because we do scan in documents that are different sizes all the time, and so you can come in and we can actually set up what we classify as scanner profiles. And so you can see here, there's this profile and there's a drop down, and we can see right now there's just the standard profile. That's the default profile. And so you'll see that it actually will be a US letter is the paper size. And so we know that receipts obviously they come in different sizes. And so what we want to do is we want to come in and say we want to create a new profile, and we can come in and say that we want a receipts profile. Okay. And so from here, now I can come in and say, hey, I want you to auto crop. So it'll actually crop right around the whole receipt and it won't have any kind of borders around it. I can say, hey, I want to also deskew it. So sometimes when you're scanning something in, it comes in crooked. And so this will automatically, the software will come in and straighten that document up for you so that it's a good looking document image. Now you can also come in and say that you want to prompt for more. And so that's another option. You can also come up here and say that you want to separate a document every one page. So on the Advanced tab, you can say separate every one of my receipts for every single, every one page, right? And so there's been a lot of questions in the Facebook group for FileCenter Receipts where, hey, I want to scan in lots of receipts, but I don't want to have to do them one at a time. And so you can just put a whole stack in, and as long as this set is set up where it says separate documents every one page, then it'll actually go in and separate all your receipts out. And so it makes it really simple. So we're going to check that box too. That's a really nice one. I'm not going to have it set up where it scans both sides, front and back, because I don't really care to see the back side of my receipt. But that is an option here too, where you can come in and say scanner duplex, and then that will scan both sides at the same time. But one caveat there is then if you're doing the separate document every page, you're going to want to come in, if you're doing both front and back, you want to come in and say separate that every 2 pages, because otherwise the back side is also going to come in and that will create a blank document every single time. Okay, so just one caveat behind that. Okay, so we're going to turn that off here. One other thing that I do like to do is that you can come in and you can specify different page sizes here if you wanted to. So you can come in there. If you said none, for instance, it'll just kind of do default there. I typically will still do US letter in this particular case. Okay. Now, what's cool about that now is that now we have got all of our settings and we've tweaked everything the way that we want it to be tweaked. We just now come up here and click on save, and then that'll save our scanner profile. And so if we come back here to the standard profile, you'll see that auto crop and deskew are not checked. But then if I come back and I select the receipts, all of my settings are already there and they're now ready to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually drop in my first receipt here. And you can come in and you can you know, if you've got sliders that are on your scanner that can kind of keep your receipt in place, then that'll be really nice for you too. But again, you don't need to if you have that DSKU pages that are already selected there. So we're going to go ahead and click on Start Scan. That'll initialize my scanner here. And I haven't used it yet here today, so it's taking its sweet time. And maybe I didn't have the right setting there. Going to come up here and select A. And then from here, we'll go ahead and start scan. There we go. And the scanner goes on. And then from here, what you'll see here is that you can now come in and see a copy of that receipt, a thumbnail, I should say. Now, if you do turn on the preview, which is something that I do like to do, again, because I have a big wide screen monitor, when I come in and I click on my receipt, you'll see that here, that it will bring in my receipt, okay? Now, because I didn't have that box set up, and I'm going to show this to you just so that you can kind of see what that is going to look like for you. Because we had turned off this prompt to add after scan, it didn't do anything. It didn't add to that scan image, right? So here I'm going to come in now and click on Start Scan. And we're going to go ahead and process that. And you're going to see this time it's going to automatically prompt to add. Okay, so now just like that, it's adding my receipt. You can see that it's analyzing the receipt as well. And so now it comes in and it recognizes a bunch of information that's on this receipt. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I want to point out a couple of things. So the very first thing, if you remember, we added Costco and Delta Airlines and Chevron, right, as our payees. And so you're going to see here that it didn't automatically recognize and it didn't bring in our payee of Shake Shack. However, because our huge database of different vendors or payees that we have, it actually includes Shake Shack. It actually recognized that Shake Shack is probably one of those options, and in fact, it was such a high priority or a high possibility, it puts it up at the top. Now, if I come in and I hit the drop-down menu, you can see that I can have, there's a lot of other ones that come in. Because it sees cheeseburger on here or strawberry shake or something like that, you're even seeing like it has, you know, Feinberger and Burgerville and Checkers and Burger King and stuff like that, right? But the very first, because the high probability was Shake Shack, because Shake and Shack were found in together, it's going to put that right there at the top. Now, you'll see it says add right next to it, and if I come up here and I say add new, you'll see that it actually will come in and put it in as my list item name. And so then I come in and I click OK, and now the payee is up here at the top. You'll see that it's got the date. It populated that for us too, although it had a hard time. Just probably that receipt was in my pocket for a little too long or something, and the 1 is not there very well on the receipt, and so it actually thought and determined that that was from 2020. So when you're coming in and you're looking, this is just a good example that you can come in and just hit the delete of the 0 and put in your own. You can also come in here and you can see that the amount itself came in a little bit weird too, so that the information that was on here didn't show up as clear, and so you can see that it was $18.93, and now I just need to come in here and just switch that. I can do that here. You can see if there's sales tax, so you can see that it was $1.56, and so it did first selected 56, but it does have the $1.56 there, and so I can check that up. And then I can come in here and say that you can see automatically that it selected my Visa with ending in 1343, and that recognized it from our receipt here as well. Now the one thing is that it didn't say debit and it didn't say credit card on here on the receipt, and so because of that, it just by default selects the very first payment method. So here I'm going to come down and I'm going to select that this was a debit card, and now I'm going to click OK. And that enters the information into this little window. This is where you can come in and also put in a little memo if you wanted to. So I could come in here, for instance, and I can say Miami conference, right? And then I can also come in and say a category. Now, one thing that's really interesting about this here too is that there is food and beverage, and we know that Shake Shack is always going to be food and beverage. So one thing that you can actually look at is you can right click on a category and set it as a payee default. So for instance, you might have Home Depot or Lowe's, and for the most part, every single time, you might have that as a category as home improvement or home. And what that does is then when you come in and you click to add it, and then this window pops up, it'll automatically select your category for you because it's set as a default for Shake Shack. So I'm going to go ahead and say Shake Shack, your default category is going to be food and beverage. Okay, you can also do that same thing for a tax category. You can right click and say set that as a default as well. You can also set up, for instance, you can set that up for payment method or something like that too. So you can always right click and say set the payment account default as the payment method, right? So hopefully that helps you there. The memo field is kind of limited in the sense I do see that there's a note or a question here is the memo limited characters, and I believe that it's 255 characters if I remember right, which probably should be enough. If it's not going to be enough, let us know because we can actually go in and modify that too. Description as well is the same type. So now from here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. And what you're going to see here now is that receipt that was up in the inbox is now gone, and it has now moved it down here into our transaction window. And so that really helps out. Quick question that just came in, just so that you're aware, if you're kind of running out of time here, the question is are we going to have a copy of this webinar? We are recording this webinar. We actually have a couple different recordings going on right now. So when we are done, we are going to upload that after we kind of edit some of the ends and stuff like that out. We'll go ahead and upload that to YouTube, and we'll send out a link to everybody that is on here right now, as well as those people that registered that we're not going to be able to attend. So good question. Okay, so what I want to do real fast too is I want to add the same receipt here. We're going to add it. We're now analyzing this receipt. You'll see now, because Shake Shack was already added into our list of payees, now this time Shake Shack is already pre-selected. Again, we're still having the same problem with our date, and I probably could change that up a little bit. If I were to go in and maybe darken up my receipt, I'd probably be able to do that a little bit if I were to change my settings there. So we're going to go ahead and we'll make these changes here real fast on this. We'll select our sales tax, and we'll come in here and we'll select our debit card again. We already have the Visa selected by default, but this is what I want you to see. So right now you can see that over here in these fields, this is what we're going to populate into these fields. But I want you to notice that category right now is blank. Okay, I'm not going to cheat here. I want you to see it. And so when I come in and I click OK, you can see now that the food category is now automatically selected because we associated Shake Shack to food and beverage. If you did it with Lowe's and Home Depot for home improvement category, it'll automatically do that too. So it's really cool on how that all works. It's one of the things that I love the most. I hate doing expense reports. It's one of the things that I loathe doing, but FileCenter Receipts has literally helped me to do my expenses really quickly. Okay. And so this is one of the things, these are some of the ways that you can come in and add your receipts so you can scan documents in. Another way that you could do it is that you could come in, let's say for instance, you had, I'm going to open up my Outlook here for us. We're just going to come down to a sales receipt here. So you might get a sales receipt from FileCenter, right? And so what you're going to be able to do is when you come in, you can drag and drop a receipt over into the top of your inbox. You can do that with attachments. So I've chosen the poor situation there. I want to actually grab something with an attachment here. Where'd that go? There we go. So I can come in and I can just drag and drop. So you can see that here is my actual receipt that was just an actual email. And so like if you're dragging it over from Outlook, you can have it there. You can also have it so that it has the PDF. If you have just like a PDF that they send you, you can come in and drag those over as well. So that's just another way of being able to come in and do that too. Okay. You can also come in if you're using FileCenter document management. One of the things that you're going to see is that you'll actually have this ability. Let's say, for instance, you've been using FileCenter DMS for a long time and you were scanning in receipts, and now you're just starting to use FileCenter Receipts. One of the things you can do is you can come in to the FileCenter, grab that PDF or select it, and then hit this add receipt. And obviously right now I don't have anything selected, but it'll then come up and basically allow you to process it. It'll even allow you to select which box that you want to put it into as well. So hopefully that's just another method of getting those receipts into FileCenter Receipts as well. Okay. Now over here on the left hand side, well, and I should say that kind of wraps up how to capture everything in. So dragging and dropping, you can do it from Outlook, you can do it through Windows folders, you can capture it from, if you're using FileCenter DMS, to be able to throw that in as well. So that is something that is also there and available. Okay, so now let's talk about the filtering. So over here on the left hand side, I think filtering is probably going to be really self-explanatory. It's something that you're going to be able to come in right away. Just to kind of mimic that here, I'm going to go ahead and switch this receipt over to fuel. But this is where you can come in and you can specify a category. So if you wanted to say, hey, I want to look for everything that is fuel based, it'll narrow all of your receipts down. You can put it in a date format. Like you can say, I want the start date to be, the 1st of June to the end of June. And then you can have all of your receipts based off of that so that you can see everything. Okay. So the filtering is obviously just a way that you can come in and do some searching capabilities off of that. Okay, so now another item that I want to do and show is that right now we can also see that there's other categories or columns that we can also come in and set up. We did that up here in the settings when we were doing everything before, but this is just another place so that you don't have to go to the lists. If you want to add another column over here, you can. So if I wanted to come in and put like sales tax 2 in here, I can come in there and do that too. Oh, I forgot to apply the changes. Let's apply the changes there. And so now over here on the right hand side, you'll actually see that sales tax 2 there as well. So I just wanted to kind of point that out here. Okay, so now we're going to jump right into reports. So the reports is where I fell in love with the program and how I really continued to just kind of move into some of the things that I wanted to do. Okay, and so one thing that you're going to see here is that when we come in, we click on reports, and this is going to open up on my other screen. So let me drag that up here. This is where you get to create your expense reports and do this very easily. Okay, and so you can actually create templates, and I'll show that here in a second. But in this case, we're going to come in and say this is the Miami conference. And if I come in and I say build report right now, you'll see now up here along the top, we see Miami conference. We see the date range. So if we actually changed the date range here and said, hey, I want something that's custom, and I can come in and specify that that's the 1st of June through the end of June. And now I said build report again, you'll see that the date range actually will change for me as well. I'm going to make that a little bigger here. This is also where you can come in, and I like to do it this way, where I come in and I say order it by, and I can come in and say I want to order this by category. And then I can come in and say build report again, and you'll see that, and this is another reason why I wanted to switch that over to fuel, but you can see here that it'll actually come in and categorize it so that we have our food and beverage category separate, and you'll see that it has the amount and it has the sales tax, and it basically goes in and sorts that out by category and subtotals everything out for you. And so this is just a really great way of doing this. One thing that I want to point out is that when we come in, let's go ahead and bring FileCenter back up. When we come in and we double click on a receipt here, for instance, we did turn off the reimburse. So like if we came back here to lists and we went down to receipt fields, we're going to say reimburse, because now we want to be able to add that. So if you are reimbursing, or this amount is reimbursable, when you check that box, then when we come in, for instance, and we want to now build out our report, you'll see that the reimburse, it says 1 versus 0. And so that's some of the things that you can come in there and do. In fact, you can also come into the column search over here, and you can say that you want it to be by reimburse. And so you can come in here also and build out here as well. And so that's some of the things that you can also come in and do, like keyword search. You can say 1 or something like that, but you can come in and immediately start to kind of build out these reports. But one of my biggest favorite things about it all is that up here in the top right hand corner, we can come in and say attach receipts on save. And when we come up here and click save as, we're going to come in and we'll store this to my desktop here, and we're just going to call this Miami, and we'll just bring this up here real quick, if it'll let me grab. There we go. We're going to show our desktop, and here's Miami. Here's our file called Miami, and when we come in and we see that PDF file, we'll actually see that here's our report that we created. Everything is formatted the same way, but then the following pages will actually be the copies of your receipt here as well. And so now you can come in, you can submit this to somebody else, you can pass that along, you can do everything that you need to do from here, but now you've created your report. And one of the things that I really like to do here is that I like to be able to, when I get back to my computer, I basically have everything ready to go, and I can submit my expense report in a lot quicker than I used to in the past. One thing I will mention, I did forget to mention this, is one other method of being able to come in and store your receipts. One thing that you can do is you can create an inbox that actually floats across everything. And what I mean by that is that when I come in and I set up a default, like an inbox here, I can actually come in and select my OneDrive. And so if I wanted to come in and do OneDrive, for instance, I can come in and say, here's my receipts folder that I take pictures, and I just take a picture with the OneDrive app. And so now you can come in and see that I've got all these different receipts that need to get processed, but I take a picture with my app on OneDrive app on my phone, and by the time I get back to my computer, everything is already in place. It's there ready for me to process. And so that's just another way. And that can be Dropbox, that can be Google Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint. I personally just use OneDrive because the syncing capability is so much more reliable. So that's just another way of doing that. Okay, so now with that, we've kind of run out of time here. We got a couple more minutes here, and obviously I know if everybody needs to take off, you can go ahead and take off, but we're going to jump right into the Q&A session here and answer some of the questions that have come in. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to go ahead and type those in. If you do need to leave, it's okay. We'll go ahead and we'll make sure to have, we're going to have a recording of the actual demonstration portion of the training portion, but then I'm going to actually come in and cut out all the Q&A pieces of the Pi, and we'll have that as a separate window or a separate video so that you can come in and just listen to the questions if you wanted to as well.